3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's enough.
It's sweet. Why aren't you picking up?
Is this on?
I think so.
The green light's on, so it should be. I could sign, it wouldn't matter what I say.
Here we go. All right, I think we're good now. All right, if you could just, tell me your first and last name and your position.
Sandie Busby. I'm the deaf and hard of hearing specialist here at OSU.
Great. I'm gonna just open up the shot so we get a good, if you do sign, we get a good shot of that. Yeah, and you could just talk to me like we're having a conversation.
I mean, we're not.
All right, let me go find our questions here. All right. So, can you tell me a little bit about your position and how long you have held it?
Been working here at OSU since April 2004. Was hired on as staff interpreter. Then as deaf people found out I was here, then became like the coordinator for interpreting services. We started teaching ASL, started training interpreters. What else do I do? Liaison for referral services. I'm the member at large for our state organization. So I try to mentor with all of the interpreter people throughout the northwest Oklahoma.
That's great. All right. Are you the only official interpreter here at OSU?
Staff. I hire lots of contract interpreters. I don't know, anyone who wants to contract that's qualified can contract with us, and then we have several, and it depends on how many deaf students need interpreters, how many interpreters we're paying each semester.
All right, and they maybe go to class with them, or do they just help study?
They don't help anyone. Interpreters, what they do is we'll look at the request from the deaf or hard of hearing students, and then I figure out a schedule to have interpreters show up in classes to interpret. Interpreters' job duty is to listen to what the teacher says, interpret that in sign language mode that works with the deaf student. If the deaf student is voicing or signing, then they voice it back to the teacher, so they're facilitating communication between the two, or the classroom and the deaf person.
All right, fantastic. What type of policies does OSU have in place to assist deaf students?
Well, any person with a disability can come into SDS, Student Disability Services, fill out a request form, meet with their advisor, and discuss what is the best accommodations for that person. Each person is different, so each person has their own accommodations. For the deaf, who I work with, some deaf prefer interpreters. Some deaf prefer captioning, or what they call CART. It's a real time. We have a person that's located outside of this school. We put it on a laptop. They hear the instruction, and it's typed verbatim up on the screen of the laptop. We have some students who are hard of hearing and just need maybe a volunteer note taker or an FM system that the teacher mics up similar to this mic, but then they can hear directly in their hearing aid or within their ear, maybe a little bit more clear than just the teacher walking around. And then we have some hard of hearing that don't request any service.
Great. All right, sorry, my phone keeps shutting off. So how would you think meeting these students and working with these students, how do you think that's helped their education or changed you in the process?
Well, interpreters are required since 1973 for the Rehab Act, Section 504. Any college receives federal funding is required to provide an interpreter or access to the classroom. That was updated in 1978, again with the Rehab Act, and then again instituted with ADA, and this time with a fine if you're not in compliance with the law. Because a lot of times people went, yeah, I should provide an interpreter, but if I don't, there's no penalty. So the ADA provides a penalty. So access to communication to government, state entities such as college, OSU, is required to have access. If the deaf person feels their access is an interpreter, we're required to provide that by law. OSU has always been very good at providing interpreters. As far as how it's changed me, my whole intention is that I got into interpreting. I sold my very lucrative business, got into interpreting because deaf people were being denied access. So most of the deaf people maybe that I interact with, I just love deaf people, but they don't change me. It's the hearing people we have to re-educate over and over and over and over and over and over and over about access because they just don't get it.
All right. No, that's a great answer, and it's really interesting. Learning about the different laws and everything and how OSU needs to comply.
Well, OSU does comply.
Mm-hmm.
Not all the other institutes, can I say, that do that. Not all state entities do that. But some of our people in OSU maybe are not familiar, so we educate them. People in the city, not familiar, we educate them. Sometimes in the city or the state, they choose not to comply.
All right. Have you or the students experienced this before? Like, what kind of other government organizations?
Well, pick anything, any business. Maybe they want to go to the movies. What is it, Carmichael's? They were sued 8 times before they finally decided, okay, fine, we'll get captioned. When you go in to apply for housing, if you want to go in to apply for a job and they've called you for an interview, oh wait, you're deaf, never mind, we won't call you for an interview. Those kinds of discriminatory processes.
I think it's sad. Have you changed any of the policies, or do you think any of them should be changed here at OSU?
I'm constantly working on legislation. I keep updating policies. I'm always looking for new and better ways to provide services to deaf persons or hard of hearing persons. I don't know, my whole goal and why I've been doing this since 1990, really since the 80s, but got my first paycheck in the 1990 is because there was not equal access. You had a warm body that was sort of kind of providing information but not really full information. So if you have half the information, is it really access? Probably not. You wouldn't accept a teacher that spoke half of the words in trying to educate yourself for a class. So why would a deaf person be forced to accept that as equal access? It's not. So I'm constantly fighting, constantly trying to inform people. You know, if you go to court or you want to apply for food stamps or domestic violence or I don't know, you want to go and see what's up with the mayor's office when they have public forums. Oh, we don't want to provide an interpreter. You ever ran for a wheelchair, why would you not provide an interpreter? So it's just those constant battles. We have medical facilities that say, bring your kid. So if you, as a woman, wanted to go to your OBGYN and have your yearly thing done, would you want your kid who's 6 to come and interpret for you for that process? And would your 6-year-old kid know about those vocabulary words? Probably not. But yet, or they'll say, well, I'll write, but do you know how many doctors will write some of the issues that are going on with you, answer your questions in full to satisfy your curiosities and I need this information? Are they going to write all of that? Probably not. So they're being denied full access to their medical care. We've had some people who, because they found this lovely volunteer, they didn't realize when their medicine ran out that they should go get it refilled. The person died. So, constantly.
Mm-hmm.
You think we're getting up in the world and then something else happens. Boom.
Let's see, what was I going? You were talking a little bit about legislation that you were trying. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Currently, we're on a committee that is trying to update educational requirements for interpreters. Currently, across the United States, Oklahoma is always like dead last, or maybe we're second, third, or fourth from last. We just hate being last all the time. But again, we're last. Across the nation, they're raising the bar to have 4.0 for EIPA, Educational Interpreters Proficiency Assessment, and put it under the national office. Currently, it's not under a national office if you're not a 4.0, and so if you're doing something unethical, then there's no one to file a complaint with to rectify that issue. Plus, at the current level of 3.5, that's only 70% accuracy. We would like to move it up to at least 80 or 85% accuracy, because we don't think that's asking too much to allow a deaf child 85% of the information. Is that really enough? But we have to have a minimum bar. We just feel 70% is not enough. Plus, current law says that, even though we require the 3.5 for EIPA, QUAS is 3 point, that's being monitored by the state, but the EIPA, the Department of Education doesn't monitor. So if people who are interpreting that are not certified have failed certification tests, so it means they can't even get 50% of the information, and we're allowing those people to interpret for our deaf children. And then you wonder why literacy rates are so low, why they graduate with a certificate of attendance. Is that fair that we're allowing substandard education for a group of people? What happened to the IDEA? What happened to No Child Left Behind? Oh, well, let's not include deaf children. So we're trying to raise the bar so maybe we can include all children and not leave this section out of our educational process here in Oklahoma. Many other states have more rigorous requirements for their educational interpreters, and the state of Oklahoma is far behind. Our last law was in 2004 that we passed. It is antiquated.
All right, and were you involved with that one kind of time?
Yeah, at that time we were trying to get the legislation passed at this higher level, but our lovely representatives, oh, well, that's going to be too hard. There's going to be too many interpreters that won't have work. They're more concerned about the interpreters working than they are about the children learning. And so they watered down the bill. And we begrudgingly thought, oh, well, okay, State Department of Education will monitor and take care of it and ensure that at least they're this minimum level, but they have not. And that's the problem, is they hire in these people, call them a para, so they don't have to label them as an interpreter. And then the State Department isn't even concerned about monitoring, let alone, saying you need to get that level 3 or level 3.5 with the IPA. They're just kind of ignoring it because it's easier to do that. Because there's nothing in the law that says they have to do that. So Department of Education is not assisting us. So we have a few of the representatives and the senators who've said, oh, that's not good enough. And so let's raise the bar, kind of keep up with the rest of the states. But we have COSA and people who are really related to teachers and teachers' unions getting their nose into this and saying, oh, well, you can't fire all those interpreters. There'll be no one to work. Again, more concerned about a few, probably less than 12 interpreters losing their job than providing quality educational services for the deaf children. So it's very sad they're looking at the numbers and really don't care about the deaf children and their education.
No, definitely. What does the EIPA stand for?
It's the Educational Interpreters Proficiency Assessment.
All right.
It's an assessment. It's a good assessment for education, but at 3.5, you're only getting 70%, and we just don't feel that that's quality. At 4 point, that's 80. We would prefer better, but again, we have to set a minimum. Originally, back in 2004, well, when we started on in 2002, we wanted the 4 point, but the legislatures felt, oh, that's too hard. Every other state, their interpreters have risen within 2 years to that level without an issue. People that can't get to that level, really? Would you want a teacher who's not certified, who's not qualified to teach your children? Why would you want an interpreter who's not qualified to interpret between the teacher and your child? Do you not want your child to have equal access to the information and get a good education? Oklahoma's already far enough behind. Now with the deaf children getting 70%, they're farther behind. And then you think, why are they not going to college? Oh, luckily the few deaf people, hard of hearing people we have coming to college have gone to good schools like Tulsa Public Schools, where they demand quality interpreters. They demand national or better. They demand, the 5 or the 4 for the QAS. They demand the higher EIPA. So guess what? Those kids can read and write, and they can come to college. They can pass the ACT, SATs, and get into colleges. We can't say that for all the schools. And it's very sad, very sad.
Well, definitely. It sounds like if you did get the chance to raise that score to a 4 point, that it would be more of an incentive for those interpreters that are below to just increase their ability to sign.
Of course.
And keep their jobs and be able to be more accessible in communication.
Any ethical interpreter is delighted to raise the bar, because that's part of our ethics, is to further your knowledge, to be the best you can be. But the people that are complaining have these level 1. 1 means 50%. And they're the ones griping to their legislature and saying, well, if you pass this law, I lose my job. Who's going to interpret for this poor kid? Excuse me, 50% is not acceptable. And you shouldn't even be interpreting for a child. You shouldn't be out there interpreting for anyone at 50%. Not acceptable.
Absolutely, because it's no different than if someone came in and they only spoke Spanish, and you got someone that studied 2 years in high school and only caught, my name is this. And
barely my name is this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just because and really we've looked through the numbers. COSA's also looked at numbers, but we're not sure where they got their numbers, because they said there's only 92 qualified interpreters in the state of Oklahoma. We have well over 200. So their numbers are skewed. And then they're saying, well, you've only got one interpreter here. Well, there's no deaf person that goes to school there, but they travel. Or the places where they have, like here in Stillwater, we have interpreters. Not all of them are registered. So, I don't know. There's just a lot of problems because Department of Education is not requiring registration. So really, it's just a mess, because they're looking at numbers and just numbers. And those few people that are complaining are saying, well, we're going to lose our jobs. You have 2 years to move up your level. So if you can't get your level moved up in 2 years, then you probably need to lose your job. But it's not immediate. We're giving 2 years to move up the bar. We're providing workshops and conferences and mentoring, and we're providing Oklahoma School for the Deaf has a summer thing every year. You go, and if you're not up to that standard, they provide a week-long immersion program to help you test better. There's all kinds of things, but mostly the people that are complaining have never shown up to workshops, to conferences. They don't go to the OSD summer program. They don't try to improve their skill. Why are they interpreting? You wouldn't have a teacher not updating their skills, be teaching your children. But yet they allowed this to continue with deaf children. So we get very frustrated.
I completely understand.
Yeah.
So how you can take the EIPA and then you can have how many other opportunities to retake it?
As many times as you want. So we have the EIPA, which is for educational interpreters. We have the QAST, which is Quality Assurance Screening Test, that's given by the state of Oklahoma. And there's 5 levels in that. Minimum level is a 3 because that's 85%. Okay, and then you have 4, 5. Then you have a national level. There's another one, the ESSE, and it's evaluating signing skills in English or something like that. Not even offered through the state of Oklahoma. It's only 2 states in the whole USA that accept it. So it's not reliable and validated, which is why we're saying that's not probably an acceptable certification. But if they're so good, they should be able to test with at least the IEPA or the QAST and get that minimum standard. But they don't want to. They're also the ones that don't go back and get, your CEUs, your certified educational units, or continuing educational units. They don't up their skills. They've been maybe at whatever level they've been at for 20 years, and they think, oh, that's okay. But it's not okay. Because there's new pedagogies, there's new ways to do things, there's new and better things that help you do your job better.
Mm-hmm. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Doesn't make any sense.
Learning a language is something you just constantly practice.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. But here at like OSU, we're training or mentoring. People come here to get mentorship and work on their skills and up their levels and try to be better for the deaf and the hearing consumers. And there's always new things you can learn, new vocabulary, new techniques, better ways to use your space, better everything. I mean, I've been doing it. I still go. We're only required 10 hours a year. I mean, come on. It's not much. National requires 20 hours. I usually get like 35, 45, 50, I don't know, because I'm just one of those people that go, wow, that's really cool. Let's go and see what's going on. I go out of states to go, and many of our interpreters do. They go to like Texas, or they go to Kansas or Missouri, or we go to our regionals. It was in Nebraska. We're doing our national conference. It's in New Orleans. And so we go. Because there's always something you can learn. Always.
Definitely.
And it helps our consumers.
Definitely. Just real quick, do you know like the House Bill number of
House Bill 1512.
1512, and that's the recent one right now
Yes,
that you're trying
that's
to
one
push
we're working on. In fact, I think they're trying to vote on it today on the floor. I don't know.
Is it the House or the...
It's in the House.
Yeah.
The Senate has already said that they're supportive, because we have a lot of senators who've said, oh, my niece, my nephew, my sister, my cousin, my brother, blah, blah, blah. And so they're very supportive. The House bill was very supportive. And then COSA and their lawyer, Andrea Kunkel, got involved, and really they're with the teachers union. They don't have any business getting into this, and they're trying to attach things to the bill that don't have anything to do with interpreters. They're out to get the school for the deaf, and so they've attached a lot of requirements that's not interpreter stuff. Should be a separate bill, but yet they think they know what's best for our deaf. Not really our deaf, but those interpreters that might lose their job.
All right, let's see here. Do you know how many deaf students or hard of hearing students there are at OSU right now?
I do know, but I don't know that I'm permitted to tell you. We have quite a few. If you wanted to come to our silent dinner or a deaf coffee, you could probably identify who all the students are. But I don't know if that's confidential information through this office.
Okay, who would we talk to ask and see if that would be okay?
Well, Isabel is our director, but she's not here today. But just like I couldn't tell you exactly how many disability students we have, that's kind of, they haven't signed a release for us to inform the world. Mm-hmm. But if you wanted to come to our silent dinners, you could identify who's OSU students, and obviously who's deaf, and you could probably take the count for yourself.
Oh, definitely. Just trying to get an understanding of how big this community is.
Well, if you're looking at community, how many students are here versus the community who supports our students, it's huge. So, and then if you're looking at signing community, again, that's huge, because people, like my student here, take interest in it and go out and socialize and learn and practice and become pretty proficient at signing conversations. So then they do it because it supports the deaf students that are here. So.
How hard do you encourage students, or just in general, like support students who might want to take the EIPA? And
if they want to come in, in fact, every Friday I hold a 2-hour session with people who are in this area that wanting to improve their skill level. I work with people over the video phone or the Skype to work with them on improving their levels. I work with people out of state wanting to improve their levels. There's a lot of people who work in mentoring with anyone. If they're really interested in improving their level, we're willing to help them. So it just helps everyone raise the bar.
Definitely. All right, let's see here. How can OSU better serve the deaf community?
Well, if we could have all the teachers that will have deaf students in their class have a meeting, but we can't mandate that, so it doesn't happen. We send out letters, and they look at it and go, okay, but we still have films that are not captioned, and so it's like, oh. Or some teachers truly do try. They really put a lot of effort into trying to get captioned films that they'll be showing in class, and then sometimes those YouTube beta captions, you look at them, it's like not even close to what's being said, but not the teacher's fault, because they looked and said, oh, it's captioned. And they look at the first few and think, okay, it's captioned. But then as they get into it, some of the words that pop up, you're going, oh, doesn't have anything. And it actually becomes a distraction to the class because the captioning is so bad. It's just that beta version, and it's not very good. So we end up interpreting that. So then the deaf student has to choose, do I watch the interpreter or do I watch the movie? Which is more important? Am I going to be asked questions on the content or what's happening, what's going on with the film? So they're kind of forced to pick. Because, even if we can sit close, if I can see you, I can kind of see the movie in the background, but if I'm supposed to be paying attention to something, the interpreter's, a few words behind or a couple seconds lag time. So once you catch it and you go, oh, missed the picture, darn. So then they are required to go back and re-watch the film. Not sure that's the best, but it's what we have. Sometimes during films they turn the lights off, and then if there's no captioning or beta captioning, and then it's like, okay, do we put a flashlight on us so you can see us? Always issues. Group sessions, you have hearing people tend to talk over each other, and then I got to pick whose voice do I want to interpret, or I have to ask, can you just talk one at a time? That always makes it not fun. Sometimes they want to put us in the back corner because I'm a distraction to the teacher. Okay, so the deaf person's not there to see me. They really don't want to see me. They do, but they don't. They're there to see the teacher. What the teacher has to say. His passion or her passion for what's going on, the presentation, the visuals, the PowerPoints, the interaction. They're not there to see me. They're there to see the teacher. And so putting us in the back corner, does it make us less than? So, it's those constant battles.
I understand. Yeah, and what you said about the YouTube beta is completely right. I'll watch like foreign movies, and even the English
they're hilarious.
It's really bad.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
All right. This question is, what programming does OSU offer for deaf students?
Oh, any discipline that they want to go. Whatever degree they want, they can go for it. We got architects, engineers, accountants, artists, you name it. Whatever a hearing person can do, a deaf person can do.
Definitely. And then it's like, do faculty staff receive any training for how to work with deaf students?
We only wish. I wish there was more of a requirement, but even when we try to hold a meeting, when we have Deaf World, Bernhargus has come. We've had a few of the instructors come, but not many. They're just not interested. And if they would come to like Deaf World, then they would see, oh, because the people, I'll tell you a story. Way back when I was working in Tulsa, we had this great big company, and several deaf people worked at this company, and we finally convinced the higher ups that during our deaf world, which is the tables turn, so the judge is deaf, the teacher is deaf, the cop is deaf, the airline stewardess is deaf, blah, 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 blah. Everyone involved